Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive all about prototyping.
Prototyping.
Yeah, we're going to be exploring this idea of building early versions,
Okay.
whether it's a product or a service, even just a system, and
Right.
how that can unlock some amazing progress.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think prototyping, it's just for tech.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's applicable to almost any field.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like this secret weapon.
Yeah.
And we've got some really fascinating examples, like how Google uses it constantly. And then there's this amazing story about the PalmPilot,
Oh, yeah.
how it all started with a simple block of wood.
I love that story.
But first, let's
Yeah.
get a handle on what prototyping really is.
Okay, so at its core,
Yeah,
prototyping is basically creating a first draft,
a first draft.
a model, a simulation of what you're creating.
Okay.
So think of it like sketching an idea on a napkin,
Uh,
building a miniature model,
right,
or even putting together a clickable demo online.
like a website or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The important thing is that it's something tangible, something
Yeah.
you can actually test and interact with.
So instead of just thinking about it in our heads, we're making it
Right.
real enough to get feedback on?
Exactly.
That's where this whole test fast, fail smart philosophy comes in?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
With a prototype, you can catch those potential hiccups early on.
Yeah.
Much better to make those adjustments when you haven't sunk a ton of time and resources
Right, yeah.
into a finished product.
It's almost like taking your idea for a test drive
Yeah,
before you actually buy the car.
exactly. It's a great analogy.
But it's funny, we're talking about prototyping like it's this new invention.
Uh-huh.
But haven't we all been doing a version of this our entire lives?
You're absolutely right.
Like rough drafts in school.
Yeah,
Those were prototypes for the final essay.
absolutely. And think
Mm.
about things like building a model airplane before attempting the real deal.
Right.
It's ingrained in how we learn and problem solve.
So if it's so natural, why is it
Yeah.
suddenly this buzzword in the business world?
That's a great question.
Why now?
I think it has a lot to do with how quickly things move nowadays.
So speed.
Yeah.
Things are changing so fast.
Companies can't afford to spend years on an idea only to discover nobody wants it.
Nobody wants it. You spent years on it.
Right, exactly.
What a waste.
It's all about speed and adaptability.
Okay.
Prototyping helps businesses validate their ideas and get feedback quickly,
Minimizing risk.
minimizing risk and wasted effort.
Exactly. The faster you learn, the faster you can pivot and improve.
So it's not just about saving time and money,
No, it's not just about that.
but our sources mention things like better user experience
Absolutely.
and even increased innovation.
Yes, definitely.
Let's look at some real-world examples.
Okay.
I know Google is a big advocate for prototyping.
Yeah.
They seem to be constantly testing and refining their products.
Google is known for its beta release culture,
Beta.
putting early versions out there
Yeah.
to gather feedback and make rapid improvements.
Oh.
It's like most of their products.
I think so.
Even Gmail was in beta for ages.
Yeah,
It seems counterintuitive, but it's working.
it's a brilliant strategy.
They just get that real-world feedback.
Exactly.
It's essential for creating products that people actually love.
And it's much better to make those mistakes and adjustments early on,
Early on.
when they're less costly,
Yeah,
than to stick with a flawed product simply because you've already invested heavily in it.
right.
It's like that saying, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product you launched too late.
That's a good one.
It's all about embracing those early iterations,
As opportunities.
opportunities to learn and improve.
I love the example of the PalmPilot
Oh, yes.
and how it all started with that block of wood.
Jeff Hawkins, the creator, carried around a block of wood
A block of wood.
shaped like the intended device.
Oh.
He wanted to test the ergonomics,
Okay.
how it felt in his pocket.
So simple.
I know.
But so effective.
It perfectly illustrates the core of prototyping.
Yeah, making an idea tangible so you can test it in the real world.
Exactly.
Speaking of simple but effective, one of our sources talks about Dropbox's early days.
Yeah.
They didn't build a whole platform right away. They started with an explainer video.
It's incredible what they learned from that.
Just a video.
They wanted to see if people would even be interested in that kind of service.
A file sharing
Yeah.
service like that.
The video went viral.
Viral.
That gave them the validation they needed to invest in building the actual product.
What a fantastic example.
I know, it's a great story.
So even a low-fidelity prototype
Right.
can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
But are there different types of prototypes?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, a block of wood is a far cry from a sophisticated software simulation.
You're right. There's a whole spectrum of prototypes.
Spectrum.
Choosing the right one depends on what you're testing and how far along you are in the process.
So you've got your low-fidelity prototypes.
Yes, like that wooden block or a hand-drawn sketch.
And those are great for exploring concepts quickly and cheaply.
Exactly.
So low fidelity is all about getting that core idea across.
Yeah.
But what about when you need to test something more complex?
Then you move into the realm of high-fidelity prototypes.
High fidelity?
These might involve digital mock-ups that look and feel like the real application,
Okay.
or even functional prototypes with working features.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
But it must be tempting to jump straight to those high fidelity prototypes
it can be.
because they just feel more real.
They do.
Are there downsides to starting there?
There can be.
Okay.
High-fidelity prototypes take more time and resources.
More time, more resources.
And you might find yourself getting attached to a specific design before you've even validated the core concept.
Attached.
Yeah.
I see. So those early low fidelity prototypes, they're just so valuable
They are.
for exploring all those different ideas and getting feedback quickly.
Exactly.
One of the key elements our sources mention
Yeah.
is iterative design, which sounds like it plays a huge role.
It really is at the heart of prototyping.
So what is it?
Iterative design means you're constantly refining and improving your prototype based on the feedback you receive.
Based on feedback,
Right? It's not a linear process.
not linear.
It's a continuous loop of building, testing, learning, and refining.
It's like sculpting clay.
I love that.
You start with this rough shape
Right?
and you just gradually mold and refine it.
Based on what you see and feel.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy.
It's not about getting it perfect on the first try.
Exactly.
It's about that ongoing process of improvement.
Right.
And another core element is user testing.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's the point of building a prototype
Yeah.
if you don't get feedback from the people who will actually use it?
You need those crucial insights that can make or break a product.
It's not just about our opinions and assumptions,
Okay.
but we need to know how real users interact with it.
Right. What works for them, what doesn't.
What needs to be improved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this ties back into the fast, fail, smart philosophy.
So we're almost inviting failure.
In a way.
Yes. But in a controlled environment.
Exactly.
Where we
Yes.
can learn from it
Right.
and make adjustments before it becomes a problem.
Precisely, prototyping gives us that freedom
You're free.
to experiment and iterate without those high stakes.
I like that it's like a safety net
Is.
for innovation.
Yeah.
Another term that keeps coming up
Okay.
is minimum viable product,
The MVP.
or MVP.
It's all about getting something out there quickly
Quickly.
to gather feedback.
Okay.
It's a stripped-down version of your product with just the essential features,
Just the essential.
allowing you to test your core assumptions
Got it.
without investing in all the bells and whistles.
So it's like releasing a pilot episode of a podcast
That's a great analogy.
to see if people like the format.
Right.
You're not putting out the most polished, perfect version,
Exactly.
but you're getting that valuable feedback.
To shape the future of the project.
So prototyping seems fairly straightforward.
It can be.
Build something, quickly test it out, get feedback, repeat.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are challenges.
There are definitely challenges, and ignoring them can lead to wasted time and effort.
So let's explore those
Yes.
in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork for why prototyping is so powerful. But as with anything,
Yeah.
there are real-world hurdles
Absolutely.
that can trip us up.
Right.
What are some of those common challenges?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones, and I bet you can relate to this,
Oh, yeah.
is the ever-present time crunch.
The time crunch.
It always feels like there's not enough time to do everything.
Never enough time.
And prototyping, especially when done well,
Yeah.
can require a decent chunk of that precious time.
I've definitely felt that pressure before.
Yeah.
It's easy to think, let's just skip the prototype and dive right in.
Right.
But I'm guessing that usually backfires.
It often does, especially if you're aiming for those high-fidelity prototypes.
Right, because those...
They can require more specialized skills and resources.
Which brings us to another hurdle.
Yeah.
Resource limitations.
Exactly.
Not every team has a 3D printer on hand or a whole squad of designers
Right.
ready to go.
Even finding the right talent to create a prototype
Can be a challenge.
can be a challenge, for sure.
And even if you nail the prototype itself, there's the whole issue of getting truly valuable feedback.
Yes, not all feedback is created equal.
Right, you need more than just looks good or I don't like it.
Exactly. You need to make sure you're asking the right questions, and this is crucial.
Okay.
Getting that feedback from the right people.
The right people
Otherwise, you could end up with a beautifully designed product
that nobody wants.
that completely misses the mark with its intended audience.
One of our sources mentioned this thing called over-prototyping.
Oh, yeah.
What exactly does that look like?
It's when we get so caught up in perfecting our prototype that we delay getting any feedback at all. You end up becoming almost emotionally attached to your creation
Attached.
and resistant to making changes.
I've totally been there.
It's
You
helpful.
pour your heart into something,
Yeah.
and it's hard to let go of that vision, even if the feedback suggests it might not be working.
Right, yeah.
So how do you strike that balance?
That's the million-dollar question.
How do you know when it's time to stop iterating on the prototype
Yeah.
and actually start building the real deal?
There's no magic formula.
Right.
It's a judgment call
Based on...
based on factors like the complexity of the project, how much risk is involved, the resources you have, and of course the feedback you're getting.
So it's more of an art than a science,
In many ways, yes.
relying on intuition and experience?
It's about finding that sweet spot where you've learned enough to move forward confidently
Confidently.
without getting stuck in endless tweaking.
Speaking of confidence,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how prototyping ties into all these other approaches we hear about,
Oh, yeah. Like what?
like iterative design, lean startup methodology,
Yeah.
even agile development.
They're all connected.
It's like they're all different flavors of the same ice cream.
You're exactly right.
At the core, they're all about testing, adapting, and refining.
They all emphasize the importance of quickly adapting to new information and feedback.
And it's not just limited to tech companies, is it?
No, not at all.
This approach can be applied to almost any field.
Absolutely. Whether you're designing a new product,
Yeah.
developing a marketing strategy, or even trying to improve a process within your organization,
Okay.
these principles can make a huge difference.
We've talked about this rich history of prototyping, but it also feels very relevant to the future.
It does.
What trends are you seeing emerge in this space?
Well, one that's particularly exciting is the role of AI.
AI.
Imagine AI-powered tools that could generate and test hundreds of prototypes.
Hundreds.
In a fraction of the time it would take a human.
That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
I know, right?
AI designers taking over the world one prototype at a time.
That's funny.
But seriously, that could be game-changing
It could be.
for smaller teams and individuals.
Absolutely. It could really democratize access to advanced prototyping capabilities.
So beyond the tools themselves,
Yeah.
what's the true impact of all this?
Right.
Who are the real winners in a world that embraces prototyping?
That's a great question.
Well, the most obvious answer is the users.
Of course.
They end up with better, more intuitive products because their feedback was baked in from the beginning.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing it doesn't stop there.
It doesn't.
There are benefits for the creators,
Yes.
the businesses, even society as a whole.
You get the nail on the head.
So designers and developers, they gain a deeper understanding of user needs,
Right.
which reduces the risk of spending months building something that misses the mark.
Absolutely. And for businesses, the faster you can validate ideas.
The more likely you are to succeed.
Exactly. And avoid those costly mistakes.
And then there's the societal impact.
Right. Prototyping can help us tackle big, complex problems in creative ways.
In new ways.
It empowers us to design solutions that are genuinely centered around human needs.
Human needs.
And it encourages a more collaborative and iterative approach, which I think is beneficial in all aspects of life.
One of the things I find most appealing about prototyping is that it's not about following a rigid plan.
Right.
It's about embracing that cyclical process, constantly learning and adapting.
Yes, that's what makes it so dynamic and effective.
It's not a straight line from A to B.
Oh.
It's more like a spiral staircase, always circling upwards towards improvement. So after this deep dive into the world of prototyping, what's the one message you want our listener to walk away with?
That prototyping is ultimately a mindset.
A mindset.
It's about fostering a culture of experimentation and continuous learning.
It's about recognizing that failures are not the opposite of success,
Right.
but a necessary part of the journey.
It's about empowering yourself to bring your ideas to life, no matter how big or small.
We've talked about this in the context of products and services.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how could our listener apply this to their personal goals, creative endeavors, even relationships?
That's a great question. What if we shift our perspective
Okay.
and start thinking about our own lives as a series of prototypes?
Our lives as prototypes.
What if we embrace those small experiments and iterations in our daily lives?
What if we started treating our goals as prototypes?
Exactly.
Constantly testing, refining, and adapting our approach.
That's an interesting concept.
It is, and it leads us perfectly into the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
So we've been exploring this whole idea of prototyping as a mindset.
Right, not just a process.
Not just a process for building products,
Right.
but it's about approaching any challenge with a sense of curiosity, a
Absolutely.
willingness to experiment.
Experimentation is key.
It's about taking action testing our assumptions.
Right.
Learning from the results.
Even if those results
Even if they're not what we expected.
aren't what we expected exactly.
And those failures.
Yeah, they're often our most valuable teachers.
I completely agree.
They give us the insights to refine our approach and ultimately achieve something even better.
Better than we initially imagined.
So how do we apply this prototyping mindset to those bigger, more personal goals?
Okay.
The things that feel almost too daunting to even start.
Well, let's take a concrete example. Let's say you've always dreamed of writing a novel.
Writing a novel.
But the idea of tackling a whole book feels overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
You might start by prototyping the first chapter.
Just the first check.
Get it down on paper, even if it's messy, and share it with a few trusted friends for feedback.
So instead of getting stuck in that perfectionist paralysis,
Right.
we're creating a small, manageable version of our goal.
Exactly.
And getting feedback early on.
And that feedback can help you course correct early on before you've invested months or even years in a direction that might not be working.
I see what you mean. Or maybe you're considering a career change, but you're not sure which path to take.
You could prototype different careers.
You could.
By taking online courses.
Yeah.
Shadowing someone in that field.
That's a great idea.
Or even just having conversations with people who are already doing what you're interested in.
It's like dipping your toes in the water before diving headfirst.
Right.
You're gathering information and testing out different possibilities without making a huge commitment.
And that's the beauty of prototyping.
It is.
It allows us to explore those options, make informed decisions.
Reduce the risk.
Reduces the risk of taking a wrong turn.
And it gives you the confidence.
The confidence?
To pursue your goals with more clarity.
I love that it's about empowering ourselves to take action.
Yes.
Even if those actions are small and imperfect.
Exactly.
And it strikes me that this prototyping mindset can also be applied to relationships.
Absolutely.
Let's say you're trying to improve communication with your partner.
Okay.
Instead of expecting an overnight transformation,
right.
You could prototype different approaches.
Like what?
Maybe try a new way of expressing your feelings. Or experiment with a different listening technique.
So instead of getting stuck in those same old patterns,
you're
trying something new and seeing how it feels.
We're treating the relationship itself as a prototype.
I like that.
Constantly evolving and adapting.
And that's crucial for any healthy relationship.
Being open to feedback.
Yeah.
Trying new things. Finding what works best for both people.
Prototyping gives us a framework for approaching those difficult conversations or navigating those inevitable challenges that arise in any relationship.
It's like we're constantly running these little experiments in our lives.
Yeah.
Gathering data, making adjustments based on what we learn.
And as we become more comfortable with this approach,
it can really transform how we approach everything.
Exactly. It becomes a habit, a way of thinking.
A way of thinking.
We start to see opportunities for prototyping everywhere.
Everywhere.
And as we embrace this mindset,
you become
more adaptable, more resilient, and ultimately more successful in achieving our goals.
No matter what those goals may be.
Exactly.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It really has.
We've explored prototyping from its practical applications in product development to its broader implications for our personal lives and relationships.
It's been fascinating to see how this one concept can have such a profound impact on so many different aspects of our lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to embrace this prototyping mindset.
Yes.
What's one area of your life where you could start experimenting and iterating?
What's one small step you could take today to test out a new idea or approach a challenge with a fresh perspective?
Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about taking action, learning, and adapting.
Embrace the journey.
Embrace the journey, and who knows what incredible things you might create.
The possibilities are endless.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of prototyping for progress.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.